Hello, everyone, and welcome to this MarTech session for the fall conference. My name is Tristan Silhol. I'm Senior Manager and Data Marketing Lead for Artefact US. I'm very glad to welcome you today to have a chat on Reckitt's Audience Engine, which is a great piece of technology we co-developed with Reckitt aimed at building a scalable and AI-driven approach to first-party data. Before we begin, I'd like to hand it off to Anna and Guy for a quick introduction, maybe starting with you, Anna, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Anna Humphreys. I'm the Senior Audience Manager on the US Hygiene business. I oversee our data practice and our audience practice.
And okay, so this is Guilherme, or just Guilherme Amaral. I'm based in Amsterdam. Thanks for having me. I'm part of the global digital transformation team, working with Anna. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Thanks a lot, guys. So we just wanted to kick this off with a very quick introduction of what our companies do. Anna, do you want to kick it off with Reckitt?
Yeah, of course. So we're Reckitt. We are made of 3 business units: our health, nutrition, and hygiene business. We have great brands that fall under the portfolio of Finish, Lysol, Infamil, Durex, Mucinex, and Airwick. Overall, we have a great purpose where we're really leaning in to protect, heal, and nurture in the relentless pursuit of a cleaner, healthier world. So really excited to be here and be able to help kind of illustrate how we've been able to enhance our brands through the audience end practice.
Thanks so much, Anna. And I'm here to represent Artefact. We're a global data services company. We aim to transform data into value and business impact. We're lucky to be present in 14 markets, and we specialize in data consulting and digital growth, helping companies, global CPG companies, for example, but also other verticals, try to infuse data into their business model and really put data at the center of their activities. So the agenda today is I'm going to start this session with a very quick introduction to our context with Reckitt and our collaboration with the company. Then have a chat with Guy specifically on the global digital transformation and global efforts that he managed. Try to gain some best practices and learnings from that process. And then we'll focus on a very concrete example of the deployment of the audience engine in the US, taking Anna's feedback and key takeaways from that. We'll finish off with a few minutes recapping the key takeaways for you guys. And of course, don't hesitate during the session to send us your questions in the chat. So what do we mean by data-driven marketing? We wanted to start off very quickly with this introduction just to make sure everyone is aligned. What we aim to do and what Reckitt aimed to do when we started working together is being able to go from broad mass market targeting to targeting the right consumers at the right time with the right message. Initially, what is usually covered by typical strategic marketing teams is focused on assumption-based marketing. So essentially building media campaigns, personalization on external factors, such as, for example, consumer surveys, brand knowledge, demographic data, national demographic data, statistical data, and of course, consumption data. And this is great to build, broad campaigns such as TV campaigns, but it might not be sufficient when current customers expect a lot of personalization and a certain level of relationship with the brands today. So more and more brands are going or innovating with data-driven marketing practices, trying to put data at the center of that marketing process. And essentially what this means is consolidating 3 types of data. One being first-party data, for example, your website data, transactional data, CRM, and other digital assets that you may own as a company. Merging this data with, for example, second-party data, such as e-retailers, Walmart, Amazon, and of course, with programmatic technologies, being also able to expand your reach with third-party data and also open source ONS data. And what our conviction at Artefact is that this data-driven marketing piece represents a very large piece of the untapped opportunities for brands, and it requires quite a lot of capabilities and innovation to be able to reach that. CPG companies specifically are facing quite a few challenges because, as you would imagine, they are less consumer-facing on the digital front than other retail companies, for example. So first of all, one of the challenges is they usually find it hard to translate traditional CMI-based segmentation into addressable audiences due to a lack of data-driven approach. And what happens is very often those companies end up arbitrarily targeting segments online and having this disconnect between what is available digitally in terms of addressable audiences and their marketing segmentation. The second challenge is the lack of a tailored and systemic approach to find the sweet spots between precision and reach. Very often, even the companies that do succeed in developing sophisticated methodologies for audience building hit this wall of having very little scale and having very small audiences, and it's not very easy to migrate those digital capabilities into actual actionable audiences. The third challenge that you've probably all also encountered today is the deprecation of the cookie and increase in privacy concerns, which means that traditional third-party based audiences are becoming less relevant and need to be replaced gradually. Fourth element being the complexity of the tools that exist today in your marketing ecosystem, having this dominance of walled gardens where it's very complicated to merge data between different platforms. And so it's going to be more difficult for CPG marketers to drive holistic insights and consolidate that data. And finally, there's also a measurement issue where great audiences or audiences that would actually deliver results are not necessarily identified because of a lack of granular and advanced measurements methodologies that report on actual sales. And the reporting is very often done on proxies or media KPIs, for example. So when Reckitt was facing those challenges about a year and a half ago, we started first with a design and test step, ideating around the audience engine, understanding which use case would be relevant for the audience engine. Early 2020, we started kicking off the audience engine with a first few pilot countries to be able to prove the value and learn to develop a methodology and best practices. Then the second step was reached in the middle of 2020 with the rollout for additional brands in the UK and the US. And more recently, the global digital transformation team is now scaling and improving the capability by rolling it out to other markets and brands. Now that you have an idea of how we started collaborating with Reckitt and the context that we're facing, let's kick it off with a bit of a discussion with you, Guy, on where this digital transformation started for Reckitt. Could you tell us a bit what was the starting point and the objective of that digital transformation at a global level?
Absolutely, Tristan. It started more than 2 years ago. You saw you were sharing a bit of our history together. It started a bit before that, when some of the leaders in our company, especially it was a combination of media, marketing, and IT at the time. It still is, by the way. And we started looking at what other companies were doing and questioning if we had the right approach towards digital media. So it is a famous concept within Reckitt that what we do in the US for Reckitt is usually better, right? And Anna knows it, right? It is better. But imagine we have to take care of the whole company. So what we were doing is not consistent. We didn't have specialists taking care of audience, taking care of MarTech, taking care of measurement. So we hired an external benchmark, and that told us that we were below industry a standard practice, and we wanted to change that. So we started a whole program of digital transformation focused on transforming the way we run digital media campaigns. We built centers of excellence across the globe, and in the US, Anna is one of our leaders in their team, in their hub there. And this was just the first step in terms of setting up the right way of running campaigns. We also talked about the right data, the right processes, the right technology, and internalizing some of these capability as well. So this has still is still happening, but this is how it started, Tristan. I hope it covers the question.
Thanks, Z. Actually, you mentioned a very interesting point, which is internalization. It seems Reckitt made quite a bold move in choosing to internalize some of its data marketing capabilities rather than externalizing to partners. Could you tell us which capabilities you chose to internalize and why?
Yes. So we ran an assessment. So we looked at what a few other peer companies were doing, and we also used this external benchmark to help us understand what we should focus first and what we should internalize to make sure we drove competitive advantage. And the conclusion was, in simple terms, we need to internalize the MarTech. So we standardize and internalize a lot of our technology used to buy the campaigns. And then we needed to develop technology or capability to drive segmentation, consumer segmentation, and audience building. That's what the audience engine is. And also measurement as a capability. So we don't depend exclusively on external measurement, as it can be very expensive and slow for tests that you want to run very often. So you can scale up your learnings very often as well. So I would say mostly these three, not necessarily only these three.
So being able to centralize data, collect and centralize data, being able to build audiences with your own kind of intelligence layer, and being able to measure independently are kind of the three main capabilities that you decided to internalize.
Correct.
Super interesting. Would you be able to give us an overview of the key features of the audience engine today?
Yes. So I think the first thing I want to say is, because we decided to build this as an internal capability, and Artefact are our partners from the beginning, but because of this is treated in the company as a product, which means we started, if you remember your timeline, we started very small, right? So we want to run one algorithm, one data set connected to a couple of media buying platforms, and that was it, right? So what we did after that was incrementally grow the capability. So if I had to describe where the audience engine is now, first of all, it's important to say it's live in more than 13 countries. It has produced more than 100 customized audiences based on our data, mostly first-party data, website visitor first-party data. It doesn't need to be personal identifiable information. In this case, actually, we're focused on the non-personal identifiable information more than the PII data at this point in time. So if you're thinking about where the audience engine sits in a segmentation strategy versus a CRM program or versus a consumer data platform, it's actually rather complementary if you think about it, as you're leaving this PII data to be taken care by the other side of business and really focusing on how do you target people that you actually don't know who they are. And still target them on purpose, right? Because you still can have data on these people. So the first part really is collecting this data and making sure using this data, first-party data from websites. It could be second-party data. We have built a few partnerships at this point with companies startups that Reckitt co-owns, for example, or even companies that are willing to work with with us to build audiences using their data, for example. And third-party data whenever we have this data available. So in US, Anna may talk about it later, we do have a strong example there, but we also have free data that is available from statistic organs, public information really that we can use as well. But all this said, mostly first-party data coming from website visitors is what we use. And then we have different ways of segmenting these consumers. We have different algorithms that we use, right? So depending on the use case, if you have, I'll give an example, couple examples. So you want to target consumers, you want to understand your consumers better, and you want to target audiences that are mostly relevant to your communication in terms of who they are. So probably you will have people coming to your website. So if you think of a brand such as Airwick, yeah, we have Airwick as a big brand for the company. We have found in a few countries, you have consumers coming to your website because they have pets. And that is probably something that was already a part of the brand strategy. They were targeting them. But the way you find these people, data-driven, has changed. So from, you know what, these people may have pets, so to people who very strongly, we believe they have pets because of what they did on our website, and it's our own data. Only we have that data, only we have the algorithm that we build, and that combination uniquely will generate an audience that competition will not be able to replicate. Maybe they'll have their own segment, right? But this segment is definitely ours.
Yeah, so you're really building a competitive advantage. It's not just being able to find addressable audiences, it's also being able to develop your own audiences and make sure those are qualified for your brands. And you're not, sharing that piece of information with other competitors, for example.
That has to drive incremental ROI, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But yes, exactly. Absolutely on the spot. So I will use community clustering, is what we call it, algorithm, to identify these different communities and then target them and understand which ones perform best in terms of ROI. And that is how we're going to start influencing our business as usual media. Yeah, Anna is going to talk a bit more about that too. And then if I want to, for example, to target, if I'm talking about e-commerce and I know I have a buy now button or events on my website that I want consumers to do, I can run propensity modeling, which is common in the industry again. But again, I have that data on those consumers. So I, again, create unique audiences that have more likelihood of performing the action I want them to do. So the second pillar really is about how to segment these consumers. And those would not work if the third pillar is not there, which is how do I use this data, this consumer data, and find these same consumers on the media buying platform. So I'm talking Facebook, I'm talking MediaMath, I'm talking others. It really depends on the country again, but really pushing this data through, finding the right consumers. So the segments we created are actually executed. It's different from assumption-based you mentioned a few minutes ago, where you need to target a specific audience, but you struggle to find a data link between what you need to target and the actual people, which is another problem the engine is here to fix.
Very clear, thanks a lot. I might just actually share very quickly the infrastructure, if that's okay, Guy.
Yeah.
That you were mentioning, just to make sure it's very clear to our audience. So really having the ability to centralize first-party, second-party, and third-party data in your own data lake, data warehouse, then build your audiences, integrate them in your current operating model and your current tools, also generate insights from those audiences to have that constant test and learn approach, and then being able to orchestrate those audiences also in an automated fashion to your DSPs, such as the Google ecosystem, Facebook ecosystem. I have a question here, Guy, is to what extent was the quality and the richness of your website data a prerequisite to being able to have the audience engine run?
So before I answer that, I'll say one of the first many of the first conversations we had with the global media team at the time were around exactly this. So you want to create audiences from website visitors, but our websites are so bad, or sometimes they can be bad, and we don't have that many visitors, So are you sure you can still generate audiences that will perform? And the answer to both were yes, and we have proven that with actual performance in campaign now. So we have defined a minimum threshold. So Artefact guided us as well on that, but our internal data science team participated in the discussion. So we know what's the minimum amount of data we need. So roughly, talking about the most simple model, we're talking about 20,000 unique consumers in the past 3 months to a specific website to start modeling. And this type of challenge, don't be surprised if you get them, but you need to build results to get around them, let's say.
Yeah, I can imagine that it must be quite a challenge to convince putting the website's data and first-party data at the center of the digital marketing strategy. Is it something that you're still, that also helps support the investment in those websites? That
Absolutely.
Fed back. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's a whole program on investing on websites happening now, and we're using the audience engine as a flag on why this needs to happen. Everybody has seen the performance, and US is leading again. Anna will talk. They're the best results we have in the world now, but other markets are following very closely. So some of them, at least, very closely, and others are starting now. So this is really, I said 13 markets live, but it's very different stages, right? So US is using this at scale for business usual. When I have a market like Brazil, when they're running a few pilots now, and they're starting to see the results, so they're going to get to the same stage in the next months.
Yeah, and just to add on to Guy's point, Tristan, some of our iconic brands right now are going through a revamp of their websites, and we're setting the foundations of the audience engine and our first-party data strategy as the first and foremost of what we need to do and achieve with the websites. So, some of our power brands, yes, they've already established our approach, but we're still working and we're evolving because the audience engine has been so impactful for our business.
That's great. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how it fed back also to that part of strategy and supported investing in developing more and more that website strategy. Thanks a lot. What I suggest is we focus also now on your market, Anna, and the US. Maybe to start with, going back to where you were before the audience engine, could you give us a bit of an overview of what was the process, how you were targeting people before the audience engine, and what were some of the main pain points in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting part about our targeting strategy is that we've been evolving constantly over the last 4 to 5 years. We started out very basic with our demo targeting, similar to most CPG companies, but in the last 3 years, we really focused on leveraging third-party data. So Guy had mentioned we have a very big partnership with Oracle. And we have really been leveraging their past purchase data because we've done a lot of exercises and analysis to understand that their heavy medium consumers within our brand or category buyers really drive very strong effectiveness in ROIs. And so we've really invested in that relationship. And I think that's been a very solid foundation for us as an organization as we've kind of built out the foundational targets in our strategy. And I think, with introducing the audience engine, it's not necessarily a replacement of Oracle, but it's a complement to Oracle because Oracle has a lot of data. They represent about 97 million households, CPG households in the United States. So when it comes to looking at household penetration tactics, we're still going to need to leverage some of the Oracle data. But what's great about the audience engine, it's really about that retention strategy and really about driving sales because we know that these consumers are going to our websites. We know that it's our first party data. We're able to really engage with them. And what's been really impactful is the ROIs that have come out of it. And, we've seen success between 12 to 40% stronger ROIs in our BAU, which just proves out why Audience Engine is so impactful and is really a good complement to our overall targeting and audience strategy and practice moving forward.
Thanks a lot. Very clear. And so I'm guessing, it didn't happen overnight, being able to integrate a capability like this into your operating model. What were some of the, maybe the struggles that you had and the key success factors to being able to, for example, have the agencies take ownership of that, have the data sources correctly used and connected and labeled? How did you make this audience engine business as usual in a market like the US?
So I think Guy had mentioned it also earlier, and Guy, our Reckitt is a very much test and learn, and if you don't have the data to prove it, you're not going to move forward with it. So, we had to do a lot of education with the brands to explain the importance of first-party data, where the digital marketplace is going with cookie deprecation, understanding that first-party data is really how the industry is evolving, and we've built a playbook that kind of illustrates the benefits of what first-party data will do for us, not only from an ROI and sales perspective, always knowing that is probably Reckitt's main KPI, but we do have other KPIs like innovation and evolution of our brand. So once we were able to kind of really sell the vision of what first-party data would be able to enable us as a company and organization to do and get the brands to kind of understand and say, oh, wow, like that's really great. And that's going to help my brand grow as well. That's where the struggle, that's where the big win was, because once the brands were signed on to understand how valuable this first-party data was going to be, it was just Audience Engine became just another part of our strategy, and it wasn't siloed off. And so it was just, our digital plan is X, Y, and Z, but Audience Engine was one of those. And so that's just a tactic that now moving forward, and as we continue to evolve, it's going to be incorporated into our plans moving forward. And it will continue to move forward and with new capabilities that you guys also offer with Audience Engine.
Actually, Anna, would you be able to share some of the results that you were able to reach in the US thanks to the Audience Engine?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of them on the screen right now, but what we've seen is a lot of success with the Audience Engine over the last 6 months. Our ROIs have ranged between 12 to 40% incremental over our business as usual. So we're netting out around 28% average ROI increase versus BAU, which is a great success and really proves out the value of the Audience Engine. We've seen very strong effectiveness results through our multi-touch attribution modeling and our MROI tool. Where we're seeing effectiveness of around 27% incremental to our business as usual. And then from a media metrics side of things, we're seeing much more efficient CPMs where average CPM is 12% more efficient than our business as usual tactics. So really successful results are all around. And that really helps prove the value of the Audience Engine. To going back to my point earlier about how we had to educate the brand teams on first party data and why it's so valuable, these kind of just solidified why the Audience Engine really needs to be embedded into their strategy moving forward.
That's very clear. Very impressive. And yeah, this also shows from an educational perspective how being able to also measure those results is kind of key to then scaling the Audience Engine capability. So, we've just came out of this. I mean, we're coming out hopefully of this COVID situation where, of course, e-commerce also has grown a lot, even for CPG categories. How do you intend to include this new situation in your priorities for 2022? And could the Audience Engine, be an accelerator for those?
I think leveraging the propensity modeling on our conversion tactics is going to really help us enhance. Reckitt is primarily in the US is a very much in-store organization. So a lot of people are purchasing in the store versus online. But I think once we start to be able to understand the conversion rates of people who are hitting our buy nows or any type of event or conversion that we have on the website, we'll be able to start building those propensity modelings on that key event or conversion to retarget to them and get them into that more of that do phase of our funnel, which will really enable us to make sure that we are sending them the correct messaging to go purchase. And so once we have the funnel, the intimacy funnel kind of established through our targeting practice, I think we'll be able to really, drive those conversions and see if we can get online sales. The difficulty with online sales is that we drive mostly to an online realtor like Amazon or Target or Walmart. And unfortunately, once they click, we lose them. So I think the main focus is let's get them on our websites, let them engage with our brand.com. Let's see how we can build off of the brand.com with our first party data, and then we can retarget them to try to incentivize them to go and purchase either in store or through one of those retailers.
Yeah, so maybe now that you've strongly tackled the first party data piece, the second party data piece with potentially partnerships will be also a priority for the upcoming months.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks a lot. All right, we're reaching the end of this session. We wanted to finish the session with a few key takeaways from our discussion with Guy and Anna. From Artefact's point of view, Reckitt is really a best practice of how to take ownership and internalize first-party data capabilities and data marketing capabilities. We think, from what we've discussed also today, being able to define a strategy to own and expand your first-party data is probably the starting point. We mentioned the strategic importance of websites, but that's just one part of your digital assets. Of course, you will have questions around data quality, data governance, being able to connect the dots between those platforms. So really taking first-party data as a strategic topic is key for us. Remember also that tech is important, but it won't work without other enablers. And as Guy mentioned, working and collaborating with IT, with marketing and other teams in Reckitt, you're really going to have to tackle other dimensions of that transformation to be able to implement an Audience Engine. And measurements, we think, is also a very important success factor to be able to surface the results and the impact to strategic stakeholders. And finally, it's a test and learn process, and it's sometimes quite difficult to follow a project like this that can last for 1 year or 2 years. So I really personally think it's super important to define a learning agenda when you start such a journey, starting from your marketing objectives and then decomposing that into various questions around audiences, platforms, whatever is most important to your teams, and make sure that you update that learning agenda according to your campaigns and your objectives. Guys, on the Reckitt side, what do you think are some of the key takeaways for our audience today?
I think the first, it says they're starting sponsoring your program, your project at the highest level. We had sponsorship at global level from the CEO, CMO, CIO of the business unit in the US, and I can say the leadership team is definitely involved there. Our marketing director, vice president there as well. The second being reaching out to external partners was just the first step, and it's something we continuously do, even though we keep learning. And I think we're if we were completely ignorant in some aspects of digital marketing a couple of years ago, and oh my God, we learned so much and so fast, but only because we've chosen partners to help us accelerate that growth and expansion of the work that was being done. So no shame in learning from outside. Maybe the last one, Anna, if you want, that's your specialty. So
yeah, I think the last one is that this is truly a test and learn opportunity, and with the power of our measurement in-house and being able to understand that the key results, we're continuously optimizing. And we're trying to learn as fast as possible to make sure that we are doing what's best for our business and really enhancing our approach and our strategy and our thinking process. So we've developed a very great process internally in the US market where each week we sit and we go through the results. We're optimizing based off media metrics as well as quick ROIs or any type of sales learnings that we can get from like POS data. And that is continuously driving our business to be much more successful than it was 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that's really a key takeaway is like the speed and keep learning from what we're doing.
Sounds great. All right. We're at the end of this session. I want to thank everyone in the audience for participating today. And of course, Guy and Anna for a very rich conversation and learnings from your experience. Feel free to reach out and also connect with Anna and Guy on LinkedIn. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.